Hey, we're just kind of, I think, in week 2 of our new series called When the Fight Calls. Come on, anybody in a fight in your life, kind of fighting for something, trying to get to the next thing? And I'm telling you, we're studying a book in the Bible called Joshua, which is the story of what happens right after Moses dies. And Moses gets everybody up to the Jordan River. Moses can't quite cross into the promised land, but Joshua, the young leader, is given that position. And then he takes these people, the people of God, into their destiny, into their promised land. And it was because of Joshua's leadership that they were able to get what God had for them. But it's kind of funny. I think it's humorous that God would say, hey, all this land is yours. Go take it. As if it's free. You won the lottery, blessings. And God goes, all right, it's all yours. But those guys actually had to get into some rumbles and some fights in every single town that they had to conquer. So they were getting beat up. They were in fights. I'm sure some of them lost their lives in trying to get what God was supposedly given to them for free as a promise of blessing. And there was a fight for it. And can I just say, whatever God has for you in your life, you're going to have to fight for it. Even if God promises it to you, you got to put the gloves on. You got to get in the ring. You got to dodge and weave, and you got to throw some punches to get what God has for you. And so there's a fight in life to get to the promised land. And today I want to dive into one of the things that's in the book of Joshua that I find so awesome. And my title for today is called No One Fights Alone. No one fights alone. I want you to hit somebody, elbow somebody. Don't hit them hard, just even though we have boxing pictures. Come on. And say, come on, you're not fighting alone. Come on. Go ahead. Actually say that. Come on. Elbow somebody. Tell them you're not alone in this. Nobody fights alone. Nobody fights alone. When the team and I, we just had our reunion dinner at our house last night from our Uganda trip, and it was a lot of fun, and we were just reminiscing about all the different pieces of the trip and how it affected us. And one of the things was that we had 43 hours of travel time coming back home, and it really wiped us out. And I ended up watching, I think, 11 movies, because I cannot sleep on planes. So I watched a bunch of movies, a couple boxing movies. I watched Invictus, about South Africa. A lot of great movies. It was a lot of fun. One of the movies I watched was the movie Creed. Anybody ever see that movie, Creed? It's the latest in the Rocky movie. It's kind of a great story. It's got, you got Adonis Creed, who his dad was Apollo Creed, and Apollo, of course, is dead, and Adonis is this young man who's trying to live up to his name, but he wants to stand on his own 2 feet without leaning on his dad's strength and the name of his dad. And he decides to come in contact with Rocky Balboa, who's kind of retired, and Rocky doesn't have any family. Adonis doesn't have any family. And they end up helping one another in life, this unlikely pair, and they both have a fight. And if you've seen the movie, you know Rocky gets sick in the movie, and he's by himself. And then you got Adonis, who doesn't have anybody, and he's by himself. But somehow they came together, and they decided neither one of them was going to fight their battle by themselves. Adonis needed Rocky to coach him, and Rocky needed Adonis to cheer him on in his fight against cancer. And I want you to know that no matter where you're at in your life today, you need people around you. You are not going to make it by yourself. And nobody's strong enough, good enough, talented enough. You're not good looking enough to make it on your own. You're going to need some people. And man, I'm telling you, nobody fights alone. I want to read to you out of Joshua chapter 1. It's one little section that's so powerful. I got the words on the screen, and you can follow along if you want. Joshua chapter 1, verse 10 says this. Joshua then commands the officers of Israel. So this is the whole nation that he's talking to, the leadership now. He says, go through the camp, tell the people there to get their provisions ready. In 3 days, you'll cross the Jordan River. You're going to take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving to you. So they're still camped on the east bank of the river. They're going to cross over into the promised land, and he tells them, come on, like a good old preacher, say, get ready, get ready, get ready. Come on, we're going to go. And let me just say this, you cannot just like cross a river. You got to prepare a little bit. And he tells them, get yourself ready. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And then here's what he does. Right after this, Joshua goes to just a couple of the tribes. There was 12 tribes in Israel. He goes to the 2.5 tribes. I don't know about you, but I would not want to be called a half tribe. You know, maybe they were a bunch of short people or something. I don't know. Maybe they were a little low on intellect, but there's 2.5 tribes, the half tribe of Manasseh. So Joshua calls together these tribes, Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. And this now is not the whole nation, it's just these guys, just these 2.5 tribes. And he says to them, remember what Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you. The Lord your God is giving you a place of rest. He's given you this land. Your wives, your children, your livestock may remain here in the land that Moses assigned to you on the east side of the Jordan River. Let me give you a little historical background to this. The whole nation gets out of Egypt, wanders in the desert for 40 years in the wilderness, and then they finally get right up to the edge of the Jordan River, and God's going to give them all the land on the other side of the Jordan River, except these 2.5 tribes were really good farmers and ranchers, and they had all these cattle and sheep and whatnot, and they had asked Moses, could we stay on the east side of the river? These are perfect pasture lands for our flocks. And Moses tells them, I'll make that deal with you, but based on a condition. And then here's the end of this section that we're going to read today, and this was the condition. But your strong warriors, fully armed, must lead the other tribes across the Jordan and help them conquer their territory. Stay with them until the Lord gives them rest as he's given you rest, and until they too possess the land that the Lord your God is giving them. Only then may you return and settle here on the east side of the Jordan River in the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, assigned to you. Basically what happens is this tribe comes up, and there was 2 kings living on the east side of the river. The entire nation takes them out, and God had planned to give them the victory. And so these 2.5 tribes said, could we stay here in the land where the victory's already been won? And Moses says, yes, but your armed men, the fighters, have got to go across the river when it's time to go in and fight all the battles with your brothers, your family members, until they get their land settled and free and clear of all enemies as well. And it was a good deal for all sides. And so this was the thing. So nobody would fight alone. Man, I love this idea that there's a place in God, there's a place in our future, there's a place of rest. There's something that God has for each of us. There's a promised land. If I could get a little bit personal here, I want to say that our church has a promise that over us. There's been times where God has spoken to men and women of God who prayed over us and given us a word from God and scriptures. And they've said things like this: God's going to give you multiple buildings. God's going to allow you to touch the city. God's going to let hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people get saved. And I hear those things, and I pray that into our future. I go, that's the promised land. I'm not happy that there's hundreds and thousands of people, sitting in their backyard a little bit hungover, thinking about, man, I've got nothing to do with my life. Come on, they need a great church. They need the cause of the gospel. They need to be in this church or some of the other great churches in town. And until God moves and there's revival in the Tri-Cities, come on, we're not going to rest. We're going to keep fighting battles. That's the promised land for me. That's what God called me out here for. There's destiny like that. Some of you, the promised land is a fight for somebody in your family to break free from whatever's holding them back. Some of you, it's a financial wall, and it's like a fight, and it's just like you go, man, I can't put the gloves on one more time. And yet you know that you're going to have to get in that ring. But I want to tell you, there is, for all of us, a place that God has in the future. There is a vision. There is a destiny that God has for you. It's your promised land. And there's our promised land too. Man, speaking about places, I've been kind of fantasizing about vacation time. I've been going pretty hard on my schedule, and so sometimes, I just sit either in my office or I'm at home or I'm driving. I just kind of space off and I start to think about vacation. Does anybody ever do this? I kind of fantasize about sitting on a beach, and there's sand, and it's a perfect 80 degrees with a light breeze, and I have a fruity non-alcoholic drink in my hand that just automatically gets refilled from somebody. I don't know who it is. They just walk up behind and refill it. And when I stick it out there, and Lisa's laying there with a big, huge hat. It's just in my fantasy. It's kind of weird. And she's popping grapes in my mouth. I'm just going to keep walking this way. I'm not going to say the rest of the dream, but anyway, the point is, I'm laying there, there's a breeze, and it's just like so peaceful, and there's nobody else on this beach except the person refilling my fruity. And then, I don't know if you've ever recognized this, but when you get ready to go on vacation, especially if you have kids, to get ready to go on vacation is exhausting, all the work it takes to get everything taken care of, find a place for Kenobi, the dog, you got to lock it up, find somebody to water the plants, there's so much work, and then you get to vacation, and you just, you want to relax, but then you got to come home, and the work has piled up on you from being gone. Can anybody relate to the problem of this? And so, so I fantasize about this place that's this perfect place, but I know that it actually takes work to get to that place. And then here's the thing, when our family ever talks about going on vacation, our kids still like Disneyland. They're like, come on, let's pack in the airplane and let's go to Disneyland. Some of you ought to be excited with me for this, right? And so Disneyland's amazing, but Disneyland is the opposite of laying on a beach. Disneyland is high stress, high work. This is where I started my whole thing called public stretching, because you're standing in a line for 3.5 hours for a 3-minute ride, and your legs get tired, you're walking on concrete, and you're eating a $5 pickle, but you're so happy that you're in Disneyland. And I kind of stress out on vacations like that. I'm like downloading the apps, I'm checking wait times, and I'm like, we'll stay here, Austin and Nolan, run and get fast passes over there. And then they're like, we're just got to the bathroom. We are not going to the bathroom. Get there, or we're going to have to wait longer. And I plan it out, and we're going here. We have team meetings in the morning, and I'm like, we're going to do this, and then we're going over here. We are not missing Star Tours, and I'm just like high stress. And so I think fantasy, soft, gentle breezes, but that's just not the reality of my life. But that's okay. Thanks for letting me just talk about that. Last week, if you were here when I was preaching, I was talking about how God told Joshua, going to get you into the promised land, and he had actually crossed over, and at one point, God had him take off his shoes and says, you're standing on holy ground. And he was in his promised place. And I literally, last week, took my shoes and socks off, kind of as an illustration in the message. Well, Josh and Sabrina Benson, they're some of our worship team leaders, and he was leading that week. And he had told me, he goes, Matt, I was on vacation just this last week. I think it was their anniversary or something. He goes, we went up with some friends, and the gals got pedicures. And so they get, that's for men, that's when women get their feet done, whatever that means. So they get their pedicures, and then the lady said, men, you're going to get pedicures because you got nasty feet, which I talked about in the sermon last week too, how feet are ugly. And so the men got the pedicures, and then they were having a good time, the couple guys, and the ladies doing the guys' feet said, all right, gentlemen, what color do you want your nails painted? Just joking around. And Josh goes, this will be hilarious. He goes, doll me up. Put some sparkles, pink, leopard stripes, get those things. And so they got their nails done, done. And they thought they're just going to walk out to the beach in their flip-flops, and their wives are going to freak out, and it would be a good laugh. Well, sure enough, that happens. Well, he hadn't taken all that off, and he's leading worship on Sunday, and he sees me take my shoes and socks off on stage, and he goes, oh no, Pastor Matt's going to make us all take off our shoes and socks. How am I going to do this? So he's freaking out. Now listen, God has a place for you. God has a place in the future for you, but there's going to be a lot of work and some battles to get there. Before you get your rest, there's going to be some work. You need to know that. In this scripture, it says to prepare your provisions, to get ready. You got to get ready for what God's about to do. Austin was telling me that he's been meeting with future interns that are getting ready for next year. We got a great group. I don't know how many kids are already signed up, like 12 or 15, and there's more coming, and it's great. And he tells each of those interns, he goes, hey, this is not like your bachelor party this summer before interns start. You get all the sin in you can. No, you're getting ready to serve God in the church. You're going to start reading your Bible more. You're going to serve God more. You're going to do what's right. And listen, if you had a promise from God that rain was coming and it was a drought season, you'd start building your ark. You'd build a boat. If God said, hey, revival's coming to the Tri-Cities, then you'd start praying for people. You'd start inviting people. You'd start serving at your church. If God said, hey, we're going to give you this building, it's going to cost money, you'd start donating some cash and going, I want in on what God has. You'd prepare yourself. You'd get ready for what God has for you. And you got to get prepared. When we were in college, Lisa and I, we had a lot of friends getting married, and tanning booths were kind of the hot rage back then, and people would go get tan, and we lived in the Vancouver area, so nobody was really naturally tan at all, but all the gals wanted their bridesmaids to be all tanned up so they look good in their dresses and for the wedding pictures. And so there was this gal who was in one of the weddings who got a package, of like 10 go to the tanning bed things, but she was late and just kept not going to get tanned. You're supposed to go like 10 to 12 minutes at a time or whatever. And so this gal, 3 days before the wedding, goes, I'm just going to go 2 times today and 3 times tomorrow. So she just hops in the tanning bed, does 2 times the next day without thinking much about it, does 3 sessions in a row on the day before the wedding. Now, can I tell you, that lady looked like the lobster on Go Ahead and Kiss the Girl. Like it was like, wow. I mean, she was in pain, like she did not look like she wanted to be. And the way she was just burnt to a crisp. Can I tell you, you got to prepare for what God has for you. Don't wait until the last minute and then go, I'm going to get ready now. Come on, don't wait until you got a marriage counseling appointment with the Phillips and the night before buy the woman some flowers and think everything's going to be okay. Come on, invest in your marriage and be a good man of God and get it together every day of every week. Like, live your life in preparation for the good things that God has for you. It's good preaching. Perry Noble is a pastor and an author, and he had this quote that is a powerful quote. Can I just tell you that if you're going to prepare, you're not just preparing for the blessing of God, you're preparing for the fight that you're going to be in. And look what Perry Noble said about this. He said, the level of the size of the vision given to you by God is in direct proportion to the pain you are willing to endure. Come on, you want to win some great victories, take a lot of land for your family, for your future, for your city, then you got to know you're going to get in a lot of battles on the way there. You're going to go through some pain to get there. I want you to know that Jesus suffered the most but won the most. Come on, some of you ladies have had a baby, and they call it deliverance for a reason. I'm telling you that like the greatest pain, the greatest sacrifice, the greatest suffering sometimes is en route to the greatest victories and promises that God has for you. It's the person who doesn't want to fight, doesn't want to get in the ring, doesn't want to stir the waters. They never win much for God. And I've got people that criticize churches and criticize pastors and all that because they just say, you do this, you do this wrong. I might be doing some stuff wrong, but I want you to know people are getting saved, and I'm in the fight. And I would rather be in the fight, doing my best, than sitting on the sidelines writing a blog critiquing everything that I didn't do right. I'm telling you, if you want to win some stuff, you got to get in the mix a little bit. You got to prepare and get ready for what God has for you. Now, here's where I really want to go today with this scripture. You got to have partnership with people to possess what's yours. Partnership. Moses dies, but some of his parting words were to those couple tribes. He said, you can have this great land on this side of the river, but you got to help the fighting men, those that have got the ability to fight. They got to cross the Jordan River and go in and help everybody else win their victories. And you know what the reality was everybody else had already helped them win their land. And so he's only asking for what was fair. But he was saying, come on, you got to get over there and fight with your brothers and your cousins, your families, and you got to be in it to help them win it. Nobody fights alone. It's a partnership. To get to that next place in God, you got to prepare, and you got to have a partnership. I want to tell you a story I haven't told in a long time. 6 years ago, felt like rapping right there. 6 years ago, but I'm wearing a tie. If I didn't have the tie, I would totally get down right now. But listen, I also think I'm going to be sitting on the beach and you're going to have a big hat. But anyway, 6 years ago we started coming out here, getting ready to church plant, and best thing we ever did. But I want you to know it's been the hardest thing that our family's ever faced as well. But for sure, the greatest thing. But by no means was it easy. And so here's what happens. We decided to move out to the Tri-Cities, and we're going to kind of take on a church that was actually going to kind of fold and go away, and some of those people wanted to be with us. And so we said, yeah, so they joined us. Then we had a group of people that been in the Tri-Cities, but kind of were dischurched for a season, and that group kind of joined us. We also had a kind of a third group that was from Vancouver, Washington, where we were from, and that third group actually started to move their homes out here and said, we're with you. We're going to actually move out and help start this church with you. Man, it was pretty incredible. We get ready. We decided that in 2010, in May, we were going to have a service inside Carmike Movie Cinema on the Sunday morning and just tell whoever wanted to come the vision of New Vintage Church, what we were going to be about, and how we were going to do it. We did that in May, and then on a handshake the next week, we got back into the movie theater and made a deal, literally with just a handshake, no contract, to stay in the movie theater, very low price, and have church up and for the next couple years. And our plan at May was that we would launch the church in September, the third weekend. And so all the meetings we would do in between were just church plant team getting ready meetings, talking about our vision, talking about who's going to serve where, what are we going to do, how are we going to do outreach, what's worship going to be like for us, all that stuff. We're having those meetings, and we get 6 weeks from launch. All excited, God's with us, people are getting added to the team. And then there happened to be a situation where a guy who used to be a pastor emails a bunch of people in my church, about half of them, and says, I'm going to be starting a church in Tri-Cities, and I want you to come and hear about it. And that was on a Friday. On Saturday, he has the meeting. And on Sunday morning, he launches his church in my neighborhood with all my church people. And I just went, man. Now, this happened about 3 weeks after we had gotten rid of our house in Vancouver and signed it off to a lease, gotten into a place here, signed our kids up for school, and we're here now. We had stepped into the Jordan River for our life. And I'm telling you, that was a blow that just about crushed me. And I went, God, why would you bring me out here and then have half my church leave? The finances went down the tube. People left and complaints and criticisms and all this. And I just went, God, what are you doing to me? And I'm telling you that was a fight I was not prepared for. It was a rough season for a couple weeks. God built the church. Lisa had some good counsel, but I want you to know we felt very alone for a couple days. But then my wife says this to me. She says, Matt, this is his church, not our church. And if we're called to pastor 10 people, we'll pastor those 10 people best we can. If God adds 3,000 to the church, like he did in the book of Acts, we'll do that too. But this is not our church. This is his church. And you got to pull yourself together. And I'm like, I know, Now listen, I started thinking about this. Everybody didn't leave me. Everybody didn't leave me. Can I tell you, when you're in a fight, you're getting punched. You see the punches, but come on, not every punch lands. Not everybody left. I want to read you the names of the people that stood with us in that season when that started. Because it's personal. And come on, we didn't fight alone. And we had people coming up to us in those next couple weeks going, we ain't leaving. We're with you. You guys came out here. We believe in what you're called to do. God's going to build a great church. We're going to do all kinds of stuff. And we love you guys. And they started to put courage in us. Can I tell you, you can't go through a great fight and fight alone. You need people to come alongside of you. It's because of people like the Garrisons, the McDonalds, the Maloney's, the Rutherfords, the Borders, Byron in his beautiful deep voice, Ndozi, the Steels, the Mulhollands, the T's, the Bures, who spelled it blurs, but it's the Bures, the Johnsons, Nicole, Patrice, the Phillips, the Welches, and the Cravens. Those people were here at that season and stood with us and said, you're not fighting alone. And they said, we're going to get our feet wet and cross the river with you. I want you to know that I might have given up if it wasn't for some people standing with us in our fight. I'm thankful for that. I want you to know that you got to find some partnerships in the church world. You might not even like church, but you come for whatever reason, or you might be mad about what church did to you in the past. Come on, church didn't do something to you. Some people did something to you. number one. And so don't blame the whole church for your little problem. Just want to say that real clear. And then let me just say it like this. You got to find people in church that you can connect to. And you got to be available and connect to some people. You got to have a partnership. It's not okay in God's plan for us to have a communion service once a month and you to come into church and then leave and never meet anybody. Never have somebody. I'm telling you, you might go, well, I'm okay. I'm doing good. I don't need church. I'm telling you, the church needs you. Somebody needs you to stand with them. Great that everything's going good for you and you're the one person that's the most like Jesus in this church. If you're the most like Jesus, then come alongside me and help me. Get alongside somebody else and help them. Have a partnership with some people. God doesn't want you to stay on your side of the river just because you got victory early in your life. He wants you to cross the river and help other people make it into their destiny. And you got to make some relationship connections. And the problem is people go, well, I don't know anybody. It doesn't matter. Connect with somebody. Shake somebody's hand. Try smiling once after church. And ask somebody where they're at. Can you help them? I read this quote or heard this quote on a podcast and it's haunted me. This quote said this: do we want to be the church that everybody wants to go to, or do we want to be the church where no one wants to leave? I'm telling you, when we started our church, I wanted to be the church that everybody wanted to go to. But now I just want to be the church where nobody wants to leave. I want to be a place where people go, man, I'm in it. I'm sticking with this. I'm sticking this out. Lisa and I were talking about church stuff the other day, and man, I'm telling you, my wife is a gift from God for me and for our church. This is true. I'm not trying to win points, even though our 25th anniversary is coming up in a week and a half. Come on, babe. That's good news. You're one lucky woman. I'm going to buy you a hat. Now listen. Lisa said this, and it challenged me. I wanted to tell you why it challenged me before I tell you what she said. It challenged me because I'm not quite there yet. She says, you know what, man, I'm just going to call people, love on people. I'm going to give to people, and I'm going to be there for people, even if people don't have the strength to quite be there for us all the time. I'm not going to give up on people, even if they give up on us. I just went, why am I even pastoring? Just take this thing. Listen, there's got to be something in us as people that give ourselves to other people and their benefit and their destiny. This is what Jesus did. This is what he did. Brad Lomenick, Catalyst conferences, he said, community is oxygen for our souls. We all want to be a part of, to be with something bigger than ourselves. Man, I don't ever want us to get so big. I want people to come to this church and get saved, but I don't want us to get so big that it's like people just come in, hide, and leave. I want us to stay small and community and handshake and how are you doing? Come to my house for dinner. Let me tell you what fighting for other people looks like. Let me just tell you what it's going to take. It's going to be inconvenient to you if you're going to fight for other people. It's not going to be convenient. We've helped people get on their feet in a lot of different ways over the years. I'm talking about our family because I don't know everybody else's story, but I added up all the years that people have lived at our house, months and years that we've had guests living in our home. It adds up to 19 years of having people live in our home besides our kids. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who are not family live in our home. Can I tell you, it's not always convenient to give up some of your own comforts, but that's what fighting for others looks like. Is going, man, I'm going to give for other people's benefit, not just for my own. It looks like giving counsel to people when they're down on their luck. It looks like giving financially to people who are in need. It looks like seeing some people in the hospital and spending time with them. It looks like adopting some people and just going, maybe you're 35 or older like me. I'm barely 36. I'm going to be 46 this month. And maybe you need to, in fact, let me just ask it like this. Who do you intentionally pour into in this church? If you don't have somebody that you go, I look for that kid every week. I look for that intern, that college-age student. You got to adopt somebody. and just go, I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to get their number. I'm going to call them. I'm going to bless them. I'm going to pour into their life. Who have you adopted and who are you given to? I'm telling you, somebody needs you to do that. They need you to do that. We got Cassandra right here. Cassandra, will you just raise your hand, please? Sweet gal. She keeps telling me almost every week, Pastor, 7 weeks in a row at the church. Pastor, 10 weeks in a row. Pastor, 13 weeks in a row. All the stuff. She got saved, got baptized in our church, got in the volunteer class. She's coming here, just serving God. She lives in the Oxford house that burnt down this week. And I told her to come see me at least afterwards. I'm telling you, somebody's got to stand with Cassandra. Somebody's got to know Cassandra's story. Somebody's got to say, we're going to help out. We got to be like that. So we're going to. Who are you intentionally giving to? It's going to cost you money. You know, when our church was younger than it is now, I would meet with church planners. And they'd come to our church and hang out with me. We'd swap stories and ideas. And I would just feel like God'd say, write them a check. And I'm thinking, I need some of my people to write us a check, you know. And like, how are we going to do this, God? And God would go, just write them a check. I'd write from our church money that maybe some of you gave. And write a check to some other guys that started a church 3 months in, struggling, feeling like they're not going to make it, feeling like everybody's left them. And I was like, you know what? I know what that's like. I'd hand a check from our church into another church and go, hey, we believe in you. Buy those lights. Get a soundboard. Buy a drum. Do what you need to do. Do the outreach. Make it happen. We're with you. Can I tell you that those church leaders look at our church not as competition, but as friends that helped cross the river? They're doing good, and we're going to continue to give. And I'm telling you, it's not always convenient. It always costs you. Anytime God wants you to give some money away, it's never when you win the lottery. That's like fantasy land. It's when you're struggling a little bit, and God goes, I want you to go without something for somebody else. It'll be disappointing at times to fight for other people because you'll fight for some people, and they'll fail, and they'll fall, and they won't do well. And you got to be their friend. You got to love them and show forgiveness. And then you got to get back up with them. And it's disappointing. But here's the joy. The joy in all of this is when you see somebody that you've gone the distance with making it into the next season. I'm telling you, like the Welches. Come on, we've been through some stuff together over the years. But the joy is seeing them making it. Come on, the Garrisons have been such great people. The Cravens, Kyle Cravens, in his all manly voice, Pastor, those guys trying to do this, now I'm going to take them out. And he's packing heat usually and all that, and I'm just like, settle down, but kind of like it that, he's there. Can I just tell you that the joy is when the people you've been invested with in relationship for a long time, they're having their babies, they're going through difficult times, they're making it, they have a fight, they're on the verge, but then they come back through and they get stepped into their destiny. That's the greatest joy, is to go the distance with somebody in time. I want to end with this scripture, Philippians chapter 2. This is in a more modern era than the story of Joshua. It's in the time, just maybe a couple decades after Jesus was on the scene. And Paul writes this to the church. He says, don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in others too. You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Now, anytime somebody says that, it's a setup, because it ain't easy to be like Jesus at all. Because if you're going to be like Jesus, you're going to go to the cross. Okay, so here he goes. You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. And he took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being when he appeared in human form. Go ahead and put the next one up. He humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on a cross. Therefore, God elevated him to the place of highest honor, gave him the name above all other names, that at the name of Jesus every knee would bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue declare that Jesus Christ is the Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Listen, because Jesus humbled himself and took less than what he could have, God exalted him. I'm telling you, when you unprivilege yourself in some ways for the benefit of some other people, God keeps track of the score. God will make it up. God keeps the books. Last thing I want to say in my last minute here is this. Church is a great place. And I know I'm talking to people who are in church, but I just want to tell you something. When we were in Uganda, there's so much need there. I started going, there's no way we could send enough money to make a difference. We can't afford to build roads, put in internet, we can't do it. But what is working there is the church. And the church there is strengthening people, and they're making it in their own context. And in this place, the church is the answer for the selfish idols in our community. The church giving to one another is the answer for our community, for people to see real love in action with people. Romance is coming along someone with a perceived commitment for an untested future. But love is coming along someone with a tested commitment based on a promise, not on performance. I don't want to romance people. Come on, we want to love people, give ourselves to them.